Welcome to Life L'Chaim. On today's show, Lee Lazarson talks with correspondent Rabbi Yaakov Thompson about how he found Judaism, why he became a rabbi, and what he sees for the future of Judaism and his love of rock and roll music. We'll talk with the rabbi right after these messages.
We're in studio today with a very familiar face to all of you. We're with Rabbi Dr. Yaakov Thompson, and we're going to talk a little bit about your journey and how you came to where you are today. Rabbi Thompson, it's great to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been a conservative congregational rabbi for over 30 years.
Correct.
But your journey didn't start there.
No, my journey started in Ohio. I was raised in a small town in northwestern Ohio, very culturally very one-sided, a small farming community, right. And my first exposure to the study of Judaism occurred when I moved to Columbus, Ohio, to begin college.
You were not born Jewish?
No, I was not born Jewish.
And so what was that moment that started you on your path towards Judaism?
I don't know when the aha moment was, but my entree to Judaism was very backdoor. I had come to college to pursue what had really been important to me for a very long time, and that was trying to understand how people and humanity and civilization got to where it is today. So I actually started my academic career in the study of classics. And originally my direction was sort of to move into the teaching of classical texts, Greek and Latin texts, because at the time I really thought somehow that held the key to understanding people today, the historical context. Right. And as my study began, I discovered, if you will, the civilization of Jews and Judaism that was also an ancient civilization. And then I began to learn more and more that, unlike other classic civilizations, it still existed. And that was really my entree into beginning the study of Jewish texts.
There's a point in which I think everybody has, in which you either study it from an intellectual standpoint and then move towards the spiritual aspect of it. Do you recall that moment, or was it just among the journey?
No, I think there was a time that came that I clearly realized that all the things I believed internally were the things that I was learning about Judaism. Mm-hmm. And I never knew it was, called Judaism. I never met a Jewish person or knew anything about Judaism, because although I grew up in obviously a predominantly Protestant culture, I had never really been actively a Christian. My family wasn't particularly religious, and I didn't have a lot of backing. And it's ironic because really now in the last 30 years as a student of Judaism, I've learned more about Christianity than I knew earlier in my life.
What were some of those baseline beliefs that moved you towards Judaism?
Well, from the intellectual side, a great influence on gelling what I believed was an essay by Bertrand Russell called Why I'm Not a Christian, which really, for me, being a young guy coming out of the 60s, early 70s, and the youth movement and counterculture, which certainly shaped my value system, Russell's argument, really the title of the essay was Why I Don't Believe in Religion. Mm-hmm. He was writing from an Anglican point of view, his personal philosophic problems with Christianity. But I think if you go back to that essay with an open mind, you realize he's just really writing about religion. Mm-hmm. That there is a difference between spirituality and religion. There's a difference between belief and action and dogma. So it pretty much gelled in my mind that I wasn't a Christian. I did not believe in any of the main tenets of Christianity. When I discovered ideas within Judaism, first of all, monotheism, it gelled. And I think the biggest hook for me as I went from the intellectual outside student of a body of information, sort of detached like any student would be, and moved to the realization that this was a living system. And for me, that had a tremendous impact, that Jewish spirituality, Jewish life was something that was expressed in every single moment of living.
But outside of the difference, because obviously we always hear Judeo-Christian principles, outside of the difference of whether the Messiah...
Yeah, but you know what, I think that even is not true. I think in many ways Judeo-Christian is a misnomer. It's something that we've tried to sell intellectually as the, sort of the gift that the Western spirit has given mankind. But I mean, the more I study, I think I learn that the tremendous differences, although, yeah, as Jews, we share some core beliefs with Christians, with Muslims, but there are also radical differences that will never be reconciled. There will always be fractures in this sort of intellectual edifice that we've gotten used to calling the Judeo-Christian tradition.
What are some of those radical differences?
Well, obviously the belief in the Messiah.
But isn't that belief whether he's been here or he's coming again? I mean, isn't that the distinct difference? If he comes again, we're all together.
Well, that's a Christian tenet. But I think, for the student of history, we see that as Judaism always reacted, the proof is in the pudding. The Messiah has not come. We've not entered the Messianic era. Everything that our tradition has said about the days of the Messiah and what we haven't seen it. And
I saw a great interview the other night with the daughter of Billy Graham, who has just recently wrote a book, and she talked about how we've entered that age, and we're in it, and moving towards the last days.
Yeah, but there have always been movements like that. I mean, take for instance the history of Judaism. Those of our viewers who are familiar with the name Shabtai Tzvi, one of the false messiahs in the Middle Ages. Again, it was an apocalyptic time. The world was in turmoil, and thousands of Jews gave away and sold their possessions, made their way from Europe to the land of Israel, expecting that Shabtai Tzvi was going to be the Messiah. I think the apocalyptic movement, the end of days, that's something that surfaces in every religion when times are very difficult. And certainly times are difficult right now.
When we come back, we're going to do a few more minutes on philosophy and religion and enter the world of politics.
Okay, great.
We'll be back right after these messages.
Do you have 8mm movie film and VHS tapes laying around that you haven't seen in years? It's time to protect your memories and have them professionally transferred to DVD. VHS videotape will start to deteriorate after only 7 years. And if you've got movie film, well, nobody's even had a projector in over 30 years. Now you can protect your precious memories. Have your film and videotapes converted to digital DVDs. You may have seen other people's movie transfers, and they may look something like this. Washed out, flicker, not something you'd like to really watch. Now look at these same films professionally transferred by Sunrise Studios. Color-enhanced and digitally corrected movies that you'll treasure for a lifetime. Find out more. Go to DVDcopypros.com or call us at 954-581-0026. Don't let your treasured memories fade away. Have them professionally transferred by Sunrise Studios. Go to DVDcopypros.com today.
We're back in studio with Rabbi Dr. Yaakov Thompson. Rabbi, it's a pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you.
You converted to Judaism when
That's
you were
correct.
19 years old.
Correct.
But there's another aspect to that in which you proceeded down the path of becoming a rabbi. How did that happen in your life?
Well, actually, by the time I came to the point where I knew that I wanted to be Jewish and lived my life Jewishly, although I was still trying to figure out what that meant, because obviously one's observance grows over time. As they say, every Jew is a work in progress. I knew that I wanted to continue studying Judaism, just as before I had an academic direction and wanting to pursue studies in order to teach other people. To me, the rabbinical school became the avenue for that. Now, I must admit I never intended to become a congregational rabbi. And actually, many of the people around me at that time, although my teachers in the Jewish Studies program, my friends at Hillel, everybody who was really my support group, if you will, said, no, you don't want to become a rabbi because you don't need to. If you want to teach other people about Judaism, get a PhD, become a teacher, become a professor. But I said, no, that's not what I want. I want to go to rabbinical school, study classical texts, and have that foundation for my life. So after a lot of give and take, I entered the seminary, the Jewish Theological Seminary.
What did your parents think?
At that time, only my mother was alive, and it was very strange and foreign to her. She had never met a Jewish person either, and had little idea about what I was talking about and trying to say to her. But she was always very supportive because she saw, I believe she saw in it my ultimate direction, and that my life was going to go in the right direction from whatever this strange thing was I was doing. So I began the seminary as a master's student in the Talmud department, and then entered rabbinical school. And after I finished rabbinical school, I stayed at the seminary 5 more years and completed my doctorate in biblical studies. And in 1980, by chance, I took a position in Queens, New York, as an assistant rabbi and youth director, Hebrew school teacher. And that was my first exposure to a congregational setting. And although it was quite unexpected to me, ultimately I would end up, although I would always be teaching on the side in many different situations, whether it be undergraduate or graduate school, ultimately, the next 30 years would be spent as a congregational rabbi.
What do you see as the biggest differences between the Orthodox, conservative, and Reform movements?
That is, one could not answer that in 10 shows. It is an approach to the dynamics of Jewish history, Jewish theology. It hinges on one of the questions of, do these topics evolve? Does Jewish law change? Although everybody intellectually, honestly has to admit, yes, Judaism has changed over time, Jewish law has changed over time. Really the theology is when, how, and why did those changes occur? And I think whether you take any doctrinal teaching, it will boil down to those questions. How do you approach Jewish history? How do you approach theologically the idea of divine texts? What do you think is immutable and what is not? What has been the input of mankind into the development of Judaism? I think all the doctrinal questions and halakhic questions, or questions of Jewish law, can ultimately be boiled down to those basic assumptions.
In that level of spirituality, where do you find that for yourself in Judaism?
Ironically, people have this conception that somehow if you're a rabbi, you're more spiritual than everybody else, or you get to be more spiritual. And I remember one of my congregants speaking to me about, as the rabbi, you're on the bima and everybody listens to you, and it must be such a spiritual experience. I said, to tell you the truth, leading services is the least spiritual experience. Because ultimately, as the rabbi, the leader, I have to look around and worry about what people are doing, who's going to participate, who's doing this, who's doing that. And it's probably the least spiritual part of my day because I have to worry about running everything. I think my I renew the wells of spirituality in the private things I do, in private study. Although Jewish spirituality, that is Jewish prayer, is always a communal experience. We pray in a group, we celebrate in a group, but I think everyone has to find that place where they are one-on-one with God. Those are where you get the spiritual highs, the peaks that carry you through all the lesser than peak experiences. And it's also true for every rabbi. It's a you hear it, being a congregational rabbi is not easy. Mm-hmm. You're called upon many things, to do many things that they never told you about in rabbinical school.
Right. And I know some of the challenges of the lay leaders within each synagogue is an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, there's synagogue politics, there's the budget, especially nowadays with, every synagogue, every nonprofit hit so hard by the economy. We're all trying to do much more with much less. And, it's always a struggle,
mm-hmm.
To try to innovate, to sustain, to grow.
Well, when we come back, we're going to speak to you, because I know you're very active as a columnist for the Jewish Journal and the Sun Sentinel here in South Florida. And we're going to talk a little bit about politics, your views, and see if we can stir up a little controversy.
Okay. Controversy is a good thing.
It is. We'll be back right after these messages. We're back for some more with Rabbi Dr. Yaakov Thompson. We're going to talk a little politics. And this segment, Rabbi, as Florida goes, so goes the nation. So our area is very important to what happens in the nation. And, in 2008, President Barack Obama carried 77% of the Jewish vote. And obviously, as an active congregational leader, you know what's happening in the Jewish community. So tell me your thoughts about Obama's support in the Jewish community today.
Well, I think everyone will admit that support is eroding. As you know from reading some of the other things I do, I have never been an Obama supporter. I felt it was a bad decision, a bad candidacy from the very beginning. For any number of reasons. Of course, I was very much in the minority. Jews are used to voting Democratic. It's one of the principles of Judaism. It's written in the Torah. A Jew must vote Democratic, one of the 10 Commandments. But obviously,
yeah.
Well, in my copy.
Right.
But we are seeing more and more that people are having buyer's regret. There has been controversy with Israel. Those who, staunchly support the president, that, don't listen to what he says, but look at his actions, and he does support Israel. And there are many people now in the Jewish community who no longer buy that line. And I see it every day talking to people. Now, I must say, as a rabbi, I am very careful in the pulpit. I respect the idea that the synagogue is a nonprofit organization. We do not endorse candidates. So I am not a guy who speaks from the pulpit about politics. But certainly the things I say in social issues and things, people know where I stand politically.
As we head into the 2012 political season, do you think he can regain it, the support of Jews across America?
No, absolutely not. I think it's far beyond that.
Right. Well, we're going to take a turn right now because you are well known for being the rock and roll rabbi.
I try.
So you have a great background in music. Obviously, I know you know many instruments. From your youth, you've been playing guitar for how many years?
Probably about 45 or so.
45 years. And I know our staff went out and shot you at a recent locale playing your music. So talk about what music's meant to your life and give us an idea of how important it is to you.
Well, music has always been a part of my life, whether it's playing, listening, teach it. But I think now, in the last 10 years, music has really become a part of what I do as a human being. Because sometimes people see this dichotomy: how can you be a rabbi and be a musician and be a writer and do, those aren't things that seem to go together. But in my mind they do, because my role as a rabbi is to teach people, to communicate, to try to be an example to them of what is possible. And that's in many ways what my music is about. It's about telling a story, it's about teaching ideas, it's talking about the possibilities that people have in their lives. So for me, there's never that disconnect. To me, standing in the pulpit is as natural as standing behind a microphone.
Right. Well, we're going to let our viewers right now enjoy a taste of Rabbi Yaakov Thompson at a recent venue. So enjoy it.
The more I learn, the less I know. More I feel, the less it shows. Gotta be the more is less, and there's gotta be some way out, and it's I know. Yeah, I know. I've been looking for this place I always think I'll find. Is it just outside my door, only in my mind? Take a ride on the midnight train like a lonely hobo king. I'll find a place where time has stopped, yes, it just don't mean anything. The more I learn, the less I know. The more I feel, the less it shows. Gotta be the more is less, and there's gotta be some way out of this, I know. Yes, I know.
So I hope you enjoyed that. Who were those performers with you, Rabbi?
Two of the gentlemen, my accompanying guitarist, Evan Gonchak, and my drummer, Jeff Zabar, are both local here in South Florida. I know them through the synagogue. They've both actually been congregants of mine. I've officiated their family occasions, and that's how we originally got together. Because there are lots of guys out there who have day jobs, but they still want to play music.
Sure.
And the bassist at that particular venue was my son Ben, who plays with other bands, but very often will fill in with me as my bass guitarist or rhythm guitarist. So we try to keep it in the family, and he and I have actually appeared with other bands at venues in Gainesville and college campuses. Where I try to bring, my particular blend of folk rock to, a younger generation.
Was there an inspirational artist for you growing up?
In terms of songwriting and stuff, it's always been Bob Dylan. To me, he is the guy who can tell a story.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, it's been a pleasure, as I said, getting to know you. And where can we find out more about Yaakov Thompson?
You can listen to lots of music at radioyaakov.com. That's my main music website. That will link you to YouTube with video projects and projects I've done here on L'chaim. You can go to my photo exhibits from there, as well as my blog spot where I post pieces that do appear here in South Florida and other Jewish newspapers around the country.
Great. Rabbi, a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition. Don't forget to visit our Facebook page for all the latest news about our program. I'm Lee Lazarson. Thanks for joining us on To Life L'chaim.